Welcome back to another episode of the Force for Growth podcast. I'm Ricardo.
I'm Courtney. Hello. Thank you for tuning in. And we are going to talk about being petty. Dun dun dun. So, what you got for us, Ricardo? I'm going to let you start this one out.
All right. So here's the
Admittedly, we
thing.
both could.
Here's the thing, Courtney. And this is what's so funny here is that when you said we're going to talk about being petty, I thought in my head, dun dun dun, but you beat me to it. You beat me to it. You beat me to it.
We got that frequency going.
Yeah, we
Funny.
really do. We really do. Okay, so here's the thing, guys. We've been talking about being petty off and on throughout the life of this podcast, right? We've talked about it. I've brought it up on several occasions of my pettiness. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Which we're all
And
guilty of. It's
and this
human.
is actually something that's interesting to me is that in the world of self-development, no one really talks about being petty. This
Yeah.
is not a topic that is just out there to be talked about
We
for
don't want to
whatever
admit
reason.
we're guilty of it,
No, we don't, because it's not
but
a
we
it's
are.
not something like, "Hey, I'm good. I do stuff. I do this. I do that. I'm positive. I'm uplifting. I'm inspiring."
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit. Well, I'm petty.
No, it's like we're just getting good at talking about being vulnerable. It's like, now you want me to talk about this? That's kinda what it feels like in the personal development world, or maybe that's just me, but
Maybe
yeah.
so. So let's dive in. I'm gonna
Yes.
give a couple of examples of my pettiness. We got some stories, some things to share. So here are some examples on where I feel that if I step back and take a look at the situations that I could possibly be petty. Well, not possibly, most likely. About 90% pettiness here, if I'm really honest with myself. Okay.
Okay.
So the first one is whenever I compete with my son, when compete with him, when he does something and I just have to go above and beyond to just shut him down, even if it's a video game,
Yeah.
even if it's a video game.
I
That's
kinda like that you aren't letting him win just because he's a kid, but at the same time,
it could be pretty petty.
you're
It could be
extreme.
considered petty, right? What do you got? Give me an
Um,
example of yours.
Mine, I had a recent situation, and I will not name names, but, oh, in business, basically I referred somebody out to a client and they went and words were had. And basically, just a situation that I see a lot of similar things in business. And I just want to back up and point out we don't need to be getting our emotions involved in business. And what I mean is if you don't hit it off with the client, okay. If you have a disagreement about something, handle it professionally. Handle it professionally. You don't need to send them texts the next day about how they should have picked you and they should have this. And that's the situation I'm referring to. And it just very extreme example of you have got to keep your emotions in check when you are working in its business. But at the same time, we're talking your spouse. You live with this person for the rest of your life. You need to make sure you're taking a breather before you're making decisions and jumping, and sending that hateful text or sending this or like, oh, yeah, well, I'm going to tell this person this. Like, what is that? What is that? So that mine was kind of one that it annoyed me. So I'm not going to go into details so I can prevent getting annoyed again, but it was just a petty situation of this like text message roll the next day that was like, that wasn't necessary or needed. And it didn't help anything. It hurt the situation more. It made
Yes.
it harder on me, things like that. That just, and to be honest, if you are being petty in business, I made a drastic decision to never refer out that person again off of that observation of how they handled that altercation with their client. And that's an extreme statement, but I just want to point out my standards were raised. I now have a few more things that I'm going to double check whenever I refer businesses out to my clients because that's a big deal to me. But in personal, I'm really stubborn. I'm really
Yeah.
stubborn.
Yeah.
And
That's an episode
sometimes
on its own.
it really is. And it's already been one recorded, but we could do a whole nother one.
We
But
could.
but yeah, I tend to kind of this I'll show you this, but I struggle to know if it's the healthy way or not. Some competition is healthy,
It is.
but am I doing this to prove it to you? Do I even need to prove this to you? So I kind of have this working on this built-in process or system that I put myself through when I am tempted to, I don't know, arguments with your siblings with this. Like you just slip back into this like child, like, oh yeah, well, guess what? No, no, no. And it just really take step
Relaxed.
back. Has it ever really helped you? Does being
Nope.
petty truly help you?
Well,
And
we're gonna discuss that in a
yeah,
little bit.
okay.
A
Okay.
little bit. Well, we're gonna discuss about does being petty really help you?
Yeah,
All right.
that's
So
good.
another petty moment of mine is Jesse, when I say something to Jesse and it's been proven wrong by society, I still go out of my way to make it right.
Seek and you shall find.
I go above and beyond to try to still prove my point that I was correct.
How does that typically end up
Not good.
on the resolution side?
Not good. Not good at all. Not good at all, as you can imagine.
It makes me
So
laugh because Jessie's
that
a pretty wise woman. So if she's standing her ground,
and
I'd be
then
curious to hear her point.
like kind of what you said is competing in my own head, right? Like
Hmm.
I'll see someone on Facebook post something and I'm like, I could do better than that.
Yeah.
Right. And they don't even know that I'm competing with them.
Yeah.
I'm just competing with myself in my own head against this person. And they have no idea that they're on my target list.
Yeah. It's almost this mixture of like comparison with FOMO that falls under this when we flip into our pettiness. Like it's not
It
quite
is.
FOMO, it's not fear of missing out, it's not quite competition, but it's this fusion of it. And we're bombarded with it every day, every angle we look at with social media and stuff like that. But
It could
it's,
be petty.
yeah, it can
So,
be a few steps backwards, even though you're charging at a goal because you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So doing
yes.
it for the wrong reasons can.
So, ask me, Courtney, say, Ricardo, what is the pettiest moment?
Okay. Oh, Ricardo, what is the pettiest moment that comes to mind right now?
The pettiest, and this is ironic that the pettiest moment that comes to mind is the pretty woman moment. Let me explain what the pretty woman moment is. For those who may have forgotten or have not watched or don't really know this reference, so this millionaire guy sends this lady to go shopping and he gives her the credit cards and they were kind of rude to her at the first store that she went to. They didn't want to wait on her because she didn't look like quote unquote their type of clientele.
Yes.
So he calls her the guy crying or whatever and he's like, "No, we're going to go get this taken care of." So he
In
goes
fact, he
into a
calls
store.
Bernadette. He knows the manager's name in the movie. He's like, Bernadette, I need to talk to you.
Yes. So then they go to this store and he like closes the whole store down and they're like waiting on her hand and foot, like everything. They order pizza in and like everything on the card and they just spoil her rotten. So
Yep.
in the midst of all of this, like she goes back to the store where they were rude to her and she's like, "Oh, do you remember who I am? I was in here yesterday." Big mistake.
Huge. Big.
Huge. Big.
Yeah, and this is while she's carrying, a dozen bags. No, I think she has a helper carrying dozens of bags
Yes.
behind her on Rodeo Drive. Yeah.
Yes, and this is on, yeah, Rodale Drive, yes, in Beverly Hills. So
Love that
that
place.
is like the epitome of pettiness.
Mhm.
Why? Because it just is.
Yeah. That but have I'm kinda guilty of a
So,
moment similar to that.
so that
Yeah.
that always gets me because there's moments where I'll go and like I'll be at a store and they ID me because I'm buying like a $50 thing, and I'm like, really? You're gonna ID me over a $50 thing on my credit card?
Right.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna go show you and spend $1,000.
I'm nervous to ask, have you actually done that?
No, I've come close, but I don't. Jesse's always there, like, babe, no,
Yeah.
don't,
The
don't,
just
don't
show
do
'em your
that.
ID. Just show 'em your
Just
ID.
show me your idea. It doesn't make sense because there's a particular store that I've been into several times where I buy like a 20 or 30, $40 thing and they ID me. but I'll go
Mm,
in there with a couple of $100 things. No ID, no nothing.
hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's what okay,
Oh,
so this
that
reminds me
brings
of
out the pettiness. Go
that
ahead.
does. And this okay, so there's I don't know if it's because I choose to dye my hair blonde. Just an FYI, this isn't real if you wanna make judgments off that. But there's a lot of cliches I fit into that, I guess if someone were to just meet me and not know anything about me or just speak to me for a second, they might make up some assumptions about me. This is a petty trait that I'm admitting to right now that I realize as you're talking about this. I will let them say, like, not I will just kinda stay under the radar. Like, if somebody wants to judge me because they think I'm just this young idiot blonde or something like that, insert kind of assumptions like that. Like, I might not at first need I'm confident, so I don't need to tell you and prove to you, like, right here in this second that, "No, I'm not." I used to, a lot of insecurity issues where I had to prove myself as soon as I met somebody or show off to you or whatever, that I actually have a brain in there. But now I just let it ride because they're gonna something unexpected is gonna happen where they're gonna be surprised by me, or they're gonna be surprised when they get that proposal from me, that how professional it is, or whatever. There's just certain things that I make sure to sharpen my saw and always build new education and different things and intelligences, but it's for a petty reason
Mm,
because I want people to be like, damn, I did not expect that out of that girl. And I'm like, that's right.
that's a
So,
great transition, Courtney,
okay.
because does the pettiness drive you? And
Yes.
this is where we're going to talk a little bit on the dark side.
Ah,
Because I think that the pettiness lives on that
cusp.
35%
Yeah.
that we don't really like to talk about, that makes us uncomfortable, that we're like, ooh, these are, this is my deep, dark secret that I don't want anyone to really know and see this part of me.
Yeah.
However, it's also important to embrace that dark side, embrace the powers that are over there, that live there. Because there's some superpowers over there in that dark side.
Yeah.
You can't just bury it and pretend like it doesn't exist. Because guess what? It comes back and gets you.
Your doctor side's probably saved your life a few times if you
It
know it or not.
probably has.
Yeah.
So I think that pettiness lives in the dark side. And depending on the situation, it can also drive you.
It's a great point. Yeah.
It can drive you.
Jesse says, pettiness is my motivation at times, and then momentum takes over and the pettiness goes away.
Mm,
Great observation. Yeah. That's a great distinction.
yes, because there's a fine line between being petty and competitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you can be competitive without being petty. Because at some point you got to be like, no, I am better than them.
Pettiness shows up at some point, even if it doesn't stay there the whole time. That's not what he's
Correct.
saying. But yeah,
It kind of shows up. It creeps its little head up and it's like, hey,
it does. Yeah, that's
we're
true. It's
being
just
petty.
a healthy competition channels gives it direction right away, so it dissolves from pettiness into something else. That's true.
Correct.
That's very
Correct. So it kind of you gotta kind of give it a feel and say, am I just being petty for the sake of being petty, or am I turning that pettiness into this energy into something positive?
mhm. Yeah.
Where does that lie? Are
Yeah.
you
This one
allowing
has
the
me deep in thought.
yeah, I mean, think about it. Are you allowing the pettiness to just stew in you? Because it's so easy to be petty right now, especially with social media.
Mhm.
It's extremely easy to be petty.
Yeah.
And it's extremely easy to allow this pettiness to just stew inside of you.
Yeah. It's
What do you
ugh,
do with
ugh,
it?
yeah. You channel it, you devil it down.
Yeah,
That's a drive I'm going through right now is am I handling this in a healthy way or what can I make better? But yeah, I totally believe you don't have to as a human reveal all your goods or all your skills right up front. You're not like giving a resume to everyone you meet, okay? You can keep some skills held back and if you need it, you need it. If you don't. But I mean, I find it very empowering that I don't try to lead a mysterious life, but there are just certain things that are for me and certain things for me to share with the world, and that's it. And
it
it's up for
is.
me to decide where that line is. And it makes me really happy when people underestimate me.
because that kinda drives you, right? It
Yeah,
feeds you, and you're like, "Okay, underestimate me, I'm gonna show you." There's a
yeah,
little bit of pettiness in that, and that's
yeah,
okay. I mean, where would we really be if we didn't have that competitive drive,
that's true.
right?
Mhm,
But again, it's about, does the pettiness just stew in you and turn into a negative emotion like bitterness? Because the road to bitterness could start at being petty.
mhm,
Or does that pettiness drive in and you see that and you're like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. Let's go. Let me get my
yeah,
butt off the couch and get that going.
that's true. That's so basically what I just heard you say is if your pettiness is growing and evolving and staying petty, not bad news bears, right?
Boom.
But if your pettiness is shrinking or morphing into something else, that's probably a good sign. So that's 2
Yeah.
thumbs up for me, actually. Yeah.
And it's really about that inner dialogue. Like, I'm going to show them, or looking at something and saying, oh, they just think they're just so blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
and not doing anything about it. That's not good. But if you
Mhm.
see something and you're like, huh, I can do that because they did it. Now you're turning it into something else. Now it's kind of going. And like you said, and I'll say it again, eventually those negative thoughts will go away. Eventually, that, oh, well, I'm doing this because of so and so, or so and so thinks they're so and so, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's going to go away once you start getting into it. But
Mhm.
if that's what it takes to drive you and get you to somewhere where you think you need to be or where you want to be, what's the harm in that?
Yeah.
As long
Agreed.
as it doesn't overtake your entire being.
Mhm. And simply put, according to your wife, negative pettiness is talking crap and not doing anything about it.
There you go.
Positive pettiness is talking and taking action. So it's pretty simple. Don't overthink it. I do want to touch on and make sure I keep this concise, Ricardo, because it could be its whole other podcast. Is you don't have to do what other people are doing, and you don't have to have other people's approval. But I
Correct.
feel like this is the sister of pettiness. Okay. So, a lot of reasons why we might feel petty or why we might feel the need to prove to others that we can do this for petty reasons, it's stemming from that area. And you just, you got to drop that addiction to approval. You really do as best as you can. And it's, you'll always have things revealed to you that you're like, oh, why should I care as you go on? So, you're always going to be getting better at that and polishing it. But if you are doing it just to prove to this person over here, or it's the joke about like you drive this fancy car you don't even like to impress people you don't even like to like come on, you're working a job you don't like to afford all that, like, so just simply put, while you're in the moments, while you're starting to feel that pettiness rise up, how are you going to channel it? Because you have that,
Where's it
you
gonna
know
go?
yeah, you have that
Yeah.
angel and devil on your shoulder, like, hey, this can empower you right now or it can disempower you. So
Yes.
just make sure you're taking the step in the right direction.
And I think one of the things that we have to really touch base on, even if it's just for a couple of minutes, is whether you voice that pettiness thought to the person or you keep it to yourself.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes.
That deserves an honorable mention. Why does it matter? Because if you keep it to yourself and it's not stewing and turning into bitterness or some other negative emotion, I don't think that's necessary for you to voice it to that person.
Mhm.
Because what's going to end up coming out is going to be what I call an emotional throw up.
Yeah.
And we don't want that.
No.
We don't want that. We don't want to just throw up on someone.
A lot of misunderstandings can be had.
Correct. Now, if you say it maybe like, hey, I saw you do something, Courtney. And I was like, oh, because Courtney did it, I know that I can do it. And I could probably do it even better. That might be a conversation that you could have with that person if you have it in that way,
Mhm. That's true. Yeah.
right? Because at the end of the day, that did inspire you.
Mhm.
Whether we want to call it inspiration or not, eh, okay, that's up to you and what word you want to frame that in.
Yeah.
But, you know, it just depends on how you just want to interpret it. But I don't think you necessarily have to voice that pettiness. as long as it doesn't just stew up inside of you and build into something that's going to come out nasty and hateful and turn into just negative feelings inside
Mhm.
of you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's honesty and then there's just telling people a novel of your opinion. And it's
Correct.
one thing if they ask for it. It's one thing if they want to hear more. If you just say one quick thing, but you
Correct.
you you can't control how someone else lives their life and you
Nope.
don't know what's best for them. So,
Nope.
we need to stop assuming we do.
Yep.
But as well, you touched on it, inspiration, that's a great filter for pettiness. That's
It
that's
is.
what I'm gonna use. It's basically like as I'm feeling petty, like, okay, but is this inspiring me or just making me want to go prove I'm better? Well, I'm gonna hold back and put myself in timeout if I'm that like getting all chicken headed with it.
Put baby in
But
the corner.
yeah, baby in the corner. And then basically, yeah, if you feel inspired by it, go forward with it. But yeah, especially practice. We don't see a lot of this, or it's one of my favorite networking techniques. But when somebody inspires you, or you feel like, oh wow, Ricardo did this thing, maybe I met him once, but I've never really talked to him. And I want to tell him how this project he's working on really inspired me. I kind of want to start one similar. Just send a Facebook message that says, hey, hope you're having a great day. That blah, blah, blah really inspired me to start something on my own. Do you have any good feedback for me? So we're
Boom.
standing in our way right here and missing a very valuable tool. Very valuable tool because one, human connection and just that genuine, authentic connection of this person was inspired by this person and authentically shared that with them. But as well, that person might give you some great tools and resources to help you do it. They might
Yes.
say, "Ooh, let me tell you what not to do because it took me a year to learn this." So, but if you are being petty and keeping it to yourself when you are inspired by somebody, that can be it can be limiting your resources. So
Or
it goes
you'll
both
go through
ways.
those hard lessons on your own and be
Yes.
even better on the other side because the pettiness kept you from asking.
Yes.
It could
Yeah.
go both
It
ways.
could.
It could go both
Absolutely.
ways. Wow.
This has
Comment
been interesting
below.
chat.
Let us know what your thoughts on being petty. I'm fixing to put up a contact form on our website, forceforgrowth.com, so you can go over there and visit the website, visit our social media, send us a message. Let us know what you think about the power of pettiness.
Mhm. Yeah. Tell us a story of pettiness. Those are fun
Yeah,
messages
those
to
are
get. Yeah,
always
tell us a
fun.
story.
And if it was really truly pettiness, or if it got you off your butt and motivated you and pushed you towards doing something, we all have a story like that, and it's
Yeah.
okay. It's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
All
Absolutely.
right.
I like this. I've never felt I had no idea what he was planning, and it was when I was telling him a story one day that he was like, "That's it. That's it. We're talking about pettiness on Friday." And I was like, "Wow, you really have been thinking on this." But
Because we
it
brought
was
it up.
in
It's
a
come up several
situation of me
times.
talking about me being petty that I was like, "Yeah, we need to talk about this." So,
We do. It's a
glad we
good
did.
topic. It's a taboo subject that people
It
don't
is.
typically talk about in this space that I feel needs to be talked about.
It is. Well,
So,
conquering them one chat at a time.
there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Force for Growth podcast. Remember to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at
Force for growth, and always remember to be a force for good
A Force for Growth.
and a force for greatness.
Bye.
Bye.